and welcome to the SmackDown Preview Podcast. I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture, joined by the Dadley Boyz of WhatCulture, Michael Hamflett and Michael Sidgwick, here to look ahead to tonight's episode of SmackDown on Fox. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts, where we not only review SmackDown and Raw, but also the Wednesday Night War between AEW and NXT pay-per-views. We have interviews, roundtable discussions, and a roundup of the week, complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WrestleCulture. But as I said, joined by Michael Hamflett and Michael Sidgwick, SmackDown is back tonight following Survivor Series.
Are you ready for a good time?
And I suppose the biggest question to look ahead to is the one thing that's really been teased this week. Who is the new member of the Firefly Fun House?
I mean, it's going to be a new puppet, but we've got like loads of content out of it, so who really cares? I mean, could it... Obviously, Liv Morgan has been linked to this role somehow. There was an episode of Raw back in September where Bray Wyatt was, I think, framing up Braun Strowman's picture to go on the Wall of Friendship. But when he said there's always room for one more and winked to the camera, there was a woman's laugh lilting in the background, and some intrepid investigator married that up to something from Liv Morgan's Instagram. So there's the rumour there. She's been posting loads of cryptic stuff, and the stuff she's been tweeting is so nonsensical. People have automatically just gone, oh, it must be Bray Wyatt. This is a load of bollocks.
Associate total rubbish with it, yeah.
Yeah, this is bollocks, so it must be Bray Wyatt. So either Liv Morgan prophecy will finally be fulfilled, or it's going to be a new puppet.
Before I get your thoughts on this, is this something that The Fiend needs now? Because he had a much improved match with Daniel Bryan as compared to his feud with Seth Rollins, but it's striking a pattern now, and I think a lot of people are concerned that if, as much as we'd love to see him hold that belt until WrestleMania perhaps, that it would get slightly repetitive if things stay as they are.
Yeah, The Fiend's dead. I'm not being funny, right? But that Survivor Series match I really liked. I thought it was hugely impressive from Daniel Bryan. He somehow contrived to make his offense like believable and work against an impervious, goofy horror monster, which has now just completely become total cliche. WWE's way of doing it, very on the nose. That was the very best you're ever going to see out The Fiend, because Daniel Bryan was involved and he told this wonderful story that made it all completely congruous to pro wrestling. That's not going to happen anymore because he's not going to be fighting Daniel Bryan every week. So ultimately, like, the character work can still be good. Even after he formally died at Hell in a Cell, there's been some fairly entertaining Funhouse segments. It might not be any different tonight. That could be good, it could be fresh, it could be interesting. But then, to quote Bruce Pritchard, the bell's going to ring. He's dead, mate. Sorry.
Totally agree with Sidgwick. I don't want this to just be like a negging on the Fiend podcast, because I'm sure there's going to be lots more of them to come when this gets worse. But I think it was you that acutely pointed out on Twitter that they keyed the Fiend as the Fiend Bray Wyatt at Hell in a Cell.
Yes.
That was actually a tell that this gimmick was about to die, because he's not the Fiend, he's Bray Wyatt. He was always Bray Wyatt. He was the same Bray Wyatt that everybody was sick of a couple of years ago, because when the match starts, there's not enough interesting character work going on anymore. I think it existed only in the Finn Balor match. Everything we've seen since then, which we could have argued at Hell in a Cell wasn't his fault. We could have argued it when he won the title at Crown Jewel wasn't even his fault. But nothing I saw at Survivor Series against Daniel Bryan, or even worse, in a dark match on Raw the following night, told me that either Bray has anything more to bring to the role, or the agents instructing him to do anything different than just spooky monster rubbish and the Sister Abigail.
So what was the turning point for this? Because we were all so hot on the Fiends after SummerSlam.
Was the worry not that this was never going to be able to translate? Because, again, like, the Firefly Fun House stuff can still be entertaining and probably will be. The recovery job on it, quite frankly, is remarkable considering the damage they did at Hell in a Cell. But wasn't this always the concern, that you take something so interesting and different that we saw in the original Firefly Fun House skits, and then if it all ends with Bray Wyatt, the OK wrestler, and a presentation of a character that once the mystique has gone, you're just left with a monster under a red light? Was it something that we were not kind of wary of from the very beginning?
I think we did well to be optimistic about it. And I honestly, whenever I see a picture of The Fiend, I just feel like a complete and utter moron. Like, there's a self-loathing that comes with looking at a picture of The Fiend or watching a Fiend appearance now, because I just felt like, come on, you're the cynical one. How did you not see this coming all along? It was wonderful in the draft process, as I'm sure lots of great ideas are, but Vince McMahon this time took a literal red pen to it all.
I'm still a fan of it. I still think I enjoy the gimmick, and as much as it's kind of copy paste, i.e., kick out of a load of finishes and then just murder your opponent sort of thing. I still think there's room for it here. Before we get on to who the Fiend should face next, what are your thoughts on the Fiend and this whole Sister Abigail thing?
I mean, I'm unfeeling towards Sister Abigail because I'm unfeeling to that entire old Bray Wyatt gimmick. Any of that sort of stuff, which I understand people's excitement for revisiting, is not the kind of thing I ever want to hear about again because I hated it as it was happening. I've got no nostalgia for it. But I'm the same as Sidgwick. I think it's going to be a puppet, probably. And, Luke Harper certainly worked on strings when he was inserted in that Daniel Bryan program the other night, so why just not him? Why not just have him, bouncing around with, and then all those Bray Wyatt fantasists get their reunion of the family or something daft like that. It's going to be a puppet that resembles something that we've probably seen in Bray Wyatt's past, and it's going to be quite on the nose, and there might be some good gags, and there might be some good jokes, and then the Fiend will have a match at TLC and will not care again.
As I wrote, cheap plug, in The Disturbing Truth Behind Sister Abigail, which you can watch on YouTube right now on WhatCulture's channel, what the hell does the Fiend need a valet for? He's indestructible. What's she going to do? Flash her tits at the babyface opponent for the distraction? I mean, I'm being facetious there, but I can only be facetious because there's no way to approach such a dynamic seriously. He's literally the last heel character in pro wrestling history to require a valet. Now, I understand that The Undertaker was an indestructible force, but Paul Bearer was a manager, but he was sort of The Undertaker was Paul Bearer's instrument of destruction powered by the urn. The Fiend is Bray Wyatt's instrument of destruction. The valet just does not factor into this at all.
And you don't even need a mouthpiece or anything like that either.
No, because that's the one thing he can do when he's not talking bollocks.
I can't wait for the day when Liv Morgan has to take out a 90-foot restraining order on one of the Fiend's opponents or something like that. Not like they can neck on through that Fiend mask anyway, but it will all end up as stupid WWE storyline, even if we get this. The Sister Abigail, if you remember, the great lost Sister Abigail was Bray in a wedding dress against Finn Balor dressed up as a pumpkin. So if they want to retcon that and bring Liv Morgan out in white gear, then so be it. But I refuse to accept it as any more meaningful than what that would have been.
Now, let's remember back to when we all enjoyed The Fiend and we were speculating about his future opponents, and we sort of laid out a sort of redemption arc, I suppose, for Bray Wyatt, involving the likes of Daniel Bryan, to be fair, to talk about him going through people in his past, Finn Balor, Daniel Bryan, maybe even people like The Undertaker and John Cena. So he's dealt with Daniel Bryan. He's retained the Universal Championship, as we mentioned. And now we look ahead to TLC. Who is next?
This is a very good question that I haven't really thought about because, frankly, my interest has declined greatly since Hell in a Cell. My investment, which was very real, has been punished. They're in a tricky spot here because they've already done Daniel Bryan. I guess they could do a rematch, but it was definitive, decisive. I wouldn't be against it at all because I might see a decent match out of The Fiend, which I don't think anyone else on that roster is capable of pulling out of him. So you can't have Daniel Bryan again, theoretically, if storylines in WWE made sense because it was so decisive and definitive. You can't go to Roman Reigns yet because he's tangled up with Baron Corbin.
Oh, we'll get to that, don't worry.
Oh, I can't wait. Can't wait for some riffing. That's clearly
Some
the...
woofing.
Riffing? That's clearly the WrestleMania direction, I think.
Yeah.
What do you do between then? It's process of elimination. Who is a babyface on the SmackDown side? And I come to that age-old problem of I don't know who's on the roster.
And the problem you have as well is you sense you're going to need a big-name opponent for the Royal. I still think having him face John Cena at the Royal Rumble would be...
He's not doing that.
No, but would be the best
If he couldn't come back to work a match at WrestleMania and he's getting more and more roles, I think he's really adjusting to Hollywood. I can't see him coming back to the Rumble, so I'm just not going to entertain it. Let's instead go with something realistic. Who's the babyface on SmackDown, top of your head?
Chad Gable.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned both those because you've got the biggest name, the smallest name.
They'll do it.
Braun or Shorty G. The biggest, smallest, Fiend in the middle.
They might do a handicap match.
Yeah.
Realistically,
The Fiend versus Team Little Big from the Mixed Match Challenge. Braun Strowman and Shorty G.
Where is the Rumble being held this year?
Oh, it's at a baseball stadium.
Another one.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, that's my point.
It's going to look great.
They didn't trust, I think, Finn Balor originally to go up against Brock Lesnar because they didn't think they could sell out a stadium with a so-called work rate guy. So as much as I'd love to see Shorty G, purely because he could make something great out of the Fiend character, because he's much like Daniel Bryan and is just wonderful technicality and storytelling ability.
He's almost literally a Firefly Fun House puppet as a gimmick.
That's the thing. What I'm saying is that's the best case scenario, but I don't think they'd entrust that to be a Rumble-sized program.
Surely, I'm getting off topic slightly here, but for me, if I'm buying tickets to go to the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, the most important thing for me is the Royal Rumble
It's
match.
a free hit.
I don't
There's a
really
history of
mind
this.
about the other
Yeah.
title matches, to be fair.
That's true. However, we're looking at it through the lens of the most hardcore of the hardcore
Yeah.
fans. The Royal Rumble ticket sales indicated otherwise. Not to get back on my NXT bollocks, but it's a salient point to be made. If you look at what matches and performers generated the most noise in the All-State Arena, you compare that level of volume to the ratings numbers for Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, people are just louder in voice and not as free with their money, in my opinion.
No, I think that's true. I think the Rumble historically is a nice free hit for these title matches because of what you've just said. The Rumble itself becomes the draw. So it almost is you either go daft with John Cena or something like that, or you throw it all out on Shorty G just for the sake of it because there's other things to generate a bit of income for those shows. That doesn't help us around TLC time, but I think Braun Strowman at the moment feels the only guy close to The Fiend in terms of a believable threat. That's assuming as well that The Fiend is going to work as a heel because he does babyface dark matches. So they could, with this character, just assume it to be flexible enough that, well, it's whoever The Fiend picks on, The Fiend is a babyface or a heel. So you could look down the SmackDown roster and find some heels, which I'm the same. If I could remember who that heel roster was post Wildcard,
You saw them all on the T-shirts.
I'd be able to line them all up. But
Randy
that's-
Orton.
Well, he's on Raw, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, cool. Genuinely.
But yeah, it's that difficult. But yeah, Braun feels right there. And as we talk about with Braun, they don't mind jobbing him. So why should we mind in a fantasy scenario?
Now that we've sort of been heartbroken over the fact that Shorty G is not going to happen, if I'm being cynical, bingo, then realistically, given the way that they book, and this isn't just being so cynical for the sake of it, they could do Braun Strowman at TLC, dodgy old finish, and then pay it off at the Rumble, unfortunately.
Right, let's talk about the bloke who faced The Fiend at Survivor Series, Daniel Bryan, and what's next for him, because they seem to transition him away from an Intercontinental. Before we mention that, actually, what are your thoughts on the new Intercontinental title?
I like it. I didn't have so much affection at the old one because it was, for me, quite an on-the-nose attempt to capture nostalgia, and I didn't want to be patronised by it.
Cody
So-
subtext yet again.
I genuinely forgot Cody brought that back. But when they brought that back, it all felt a bit like we're doing everything we can to just to cater to dorks like us. And I was like, I'm not having that. I'll just watch old matches with the old belt.
Yeah.
Fans. Cody ain't Brett, so that sounds like I'm picking on Cody, but you get my point. So I quite like the new design. I thought it was different enough, and they only make these to flog new merch. You know what the crack is.
If the Intercontinental title was half as worthy as it looked, I probably would have been a bit upset. Because as much as I've tired of this company for quite some time now, I can still just pop back into the network and watch the glory days of when I learned to love the art of pro wrestling and not just the spectacle, which the Intercontinental title was my gateway drug to actually loving pro wrestling and not sports entertainment. I would have been upset, but it hasn't meant a damn in years and years. The only problem with that Intercontinental title is that it doesn't photograph well at all.
Yeah.
It looks nice close up and well lit, but it just looks like a big black strap.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned there, they transitioned Daniel Bryan away from a potential feud with Shinsuke Nakamura for the IC title for this Universal Championship feud. Will they return to that, or do you see them going in a different direction?
I hope they return to it because I think they really had something with Bryan's interactions with Sami Zayn as well.
Yeah.
Nakamura, as we know, isn't a guarantee of a great match like people think he is, but he's got the odd ones buried away. Bryan would absolutely give him that because he gives everyone their best
Had
match.
a good showing at Survivor Series.
Yeah, liked him there, and I certainly think Bryan, but that exact conversation could be applied to The Fiend, and Bryan gave him that
Yeah.
as well. So Bryan almost surely would have Nakamura, and I genuinely liked what Zayn and Bryan, it felt to me what they were trying to do in spite of the scripting. Just like, can we drag the bones of an actual story out with this nonsense that we're being asked to speak? And I think they were. I think Bryan's brilliantly managed to walk this tightrope between the new Daniel Bryan and the Yes Movement Daniel Bryan. Zayn is the perfect sort of opposition to that because he's fully embraced being a heel because it's like this world doesn't want guys like us. And I love that interaction, so I'd be welcome to go back to that. And yet, I think they've already tired of it and will probably go into the mid.
The weird scenario that they found themselves in, and they find themselves in every single November, is that various plot threads just have to be completely put away, but they could be picked back up. And because it's so chaotic, there's kind of two they could revisit, and I don't quite know which one they'll go for. They've used the history between Daniel Bryan and The Miz to further the Fiend program, but now that that's done and dusted, they could revisit Daniel Bryan and The Miz as an actual program in itself. As we've pointed out, they had been building towards some kind of Bryan versus Nakamura match. They could do either here, or they could just do nothing. I'm with Hamflet. I really liked and crucially believed in the interactions between Sami Zayn and Daniel Bryan. You could totally see them having either some kind of agreement in philosophy that could inform some kind of partnership, or they could have some kind of disagreement in the way that they want to adapt that philosophy into their personal lives. Whatever, there's actual real narrative potential in that dynamic, and I would love to see them go there.
So we could eventually build a Daniel Bryan versus The Miz at WrestleMania, is what you're saying.
Doesn't count
Sounds
because
like what you were saying.
it was for WrestleMania 35 specifically.
And for the title.
And for the title.
I love the idea that you kept your Greg's receipts from all those passes. Right.
We're having this out now. Let's talk a little bit about Bayley. How does she recover from Survivor Series?
She had an absolute meh. She did the botch that kind of defined how loose and messy and just kind of not heated at all that match ended up being. I kind of feel for Bayley because that wasn't consistent with her performances at all. She had an off night, but the problem is that knowing how they kick the cat in that organisation, if you look at who they want to push, Shayna Baszler, versus the one person they've done well to push versus Becky Lynch, it looks like Bayley could be the scapegoat for this.
Do you think, because I think it's right there, that you've got Nikki Cross, who's got a pinfall victory, I do believe, over Bayley.
Yeah.
And you've got this wild TLC stipulation big pay-per-view coming up. That's the ideal scenario for those two, I think.
I was immediately kind of in the aftermath of the Survivor Series. I must point out, for full disclosure, even live in the building, I was so many IPAs deep into that show by this point that I think my eyes were kinder to that match on the night than they were the next day, because that was a bit of a disaster for three favourites of mine and most fans, I think. Bayley, I think it was that bad a night that she'll be the one to suffer the consequences of it, and I could see them heading towards a triple threat for TLC that also features Sasha Banks. So it's a way to transition the title from Bayley to Sasha, who had a pretty good night and has remained kind of full of the spark that she had following the Becky Lynch feud on SmackDown. And she has blue hair and it looks good on blue posters. I know that sounds daft, but honestly, I saw on the Allstate Arena banners that she was the one positioned alongside Roman Reigns for SmackDown, despite Bayley being the champion. And I just thought, that's ideal. WWE love that sort of branding, and it's a way for Sasha to win the title without having to pin her best mate. Nikki Cross can be the third. They did it last year. They were pretty good in the way that they used Asuka with was it with Becky and Charlotte last year?
Yeah.
So that's an opportunity for Bayley to have a make good sort of match on a big stage, but then to get the belt on Sasha, and it just looks quite neat for WWE. And heels with titles around Rumble season generally works quite well because you start looking towards WrestleMania.
I would like to see Nikki Cross rewarded with inclusion in a triple threat match because she's been really good. I wasn't a fan of her NXT character, but I've really been quite charmed by what she's done on the main roster. And to the writing team's credit, they've actually got the crowds connecting with Nikki Cross.
I really love her.
They've done really, really well, in my opinion. So she needs to be rewarded. And I think she could reach that next level. That next level will spew her back down because that's what happens. But in this sort of completely disposable WWE landscape that we're in right now, she would do awesome stuff in a ladder match and really get that connection with the crowd that they'll remember.
You could see the fingertips on the belt spot before one of the heels pulls her down, being a really heated moment for her.
And she's a proper committed worker. She'll take some horrendous bumps just to get over. And if the match is that great, which it could be, then fans will not forget that. And it could do her well long term, even if the long term booking doesn't serve her well at all.
Right. You two have been so good. Let's talk about Roman Reigns and King Corbin. We had to sort of take
You're talking us like dogs. You've been so good. You can have a treat.
we had a bit of a diversion around Survivor Series. Obviously,
whole podcast stay.
Played into the dynamic of the match. There are rumours of a dog collar match?
Yeah.
Where do they go with this?
I mean, it's that or loser eats dog food, isn't it? Or kennel from hell.
Or the dog poop. The dog poop.
There you go. Well, so how does this end badly? If all the dog-related stipulations are so brilliant, how can this possibly go wrong?
One nation under dog.
If they're under one nation attached to a collar, I don't know. Where are we going with this?
Big dog and a lone wolf.
Shut up, man. I'm trying to get my thoughts straight.
Dog stuff.
They're building towards a dog collar match between Baron Corbin and the big dog Roman Reigns. So far, they've built this program by having a dog on a Titantron that couldn't bark properly because its testicles had shrunk and it was a little dog now. And then a big dog mascot, no psychology, came out and just did a thing. What I'm getting at here is
Roman's
that
entrance.
there's going to be more dog stuff. Vince McMahon was howling apparently at the dog stuff. The question we need to ask, and we did it last week, I'm doing it again because I find it amusing, is what specific dog stuff are we going to see on SmackDown? Is there going to be dog crap, dog food, a dog kennel that Baron Corbin gets put in by the big dog, Roman Reigns? What kind of dog stuff, Michael Hamflett, are we going to see?
Before you get to yours, I'm going to quickly do I'm just going to repeat my prediction from last week. I think I had Keith Lee in the dog costume last week as part of the invasion. I'm just going to have Roman, big dog costume.
Imagine that invasion.
Akin to, as you pointed out to me, Kenny Omega and Cody Rhodes with the, what was the bear called?
Barehead.
But was it Barry the business bear?
It's something like that.
Yes, akin to that, basically. Roman Reigns removes the dog head. It's him.
Rarely would I praise Cody, but can we not compare that to a really brilliant Cody angle, please? I'm glad Sidgwick took the lead on this one, and his bark first and his bite, but I can't be...
You haven't been bitten yet.
I can't be critical of this rubbish because I think it was Sidgwick himself during a very low period for Raw that said sometimes the morning after, all you want is the content. Like if it's a really drab show, all you want is something absurd. And there's, as we've discussed, it's a bit of a dry time for SmackDown. So when Baron Corbin brings out that pallet of dog poo that we've not seen since 1999, or it has this huge, and it'll be an industry-sized tin of pedigree chum, like the biggest one that Vince can find in that town, an oil drum of dog food. You know, it would never just be one can because that won't look good on camera, pal. And a Fox executive counts the zeros on that contract. I think I'm all in for this. You've got to steer into this because this is a very December programme. Like you look back on the years of Big Show and Eric Rowan fighting over steel stairs because that just happened to be the convenient weapon. You can do this utter garbage at this time of year.
Tables, ladders, chairs, and kennels.
Wasn't it this time last year that Corbin had been blamed for Raw's downfall, so they just lined up every babyface, including Braun Strowman, in a sling to feud with him for a month? It's meaningless crap. Considering how close we are to WrestleMania and the road to WrestleMania, it's so meaningless that it's that last thing for Roman Reigns to do before, like, one morning he wakes up on SmackDown and he's like, oh, actually, it's time to do important stuff now and win my title back. This is that last hurdle.
I've just had a great thought about what they may do surrounding your dog food
Oil drum
thing. Right. What was one of your least favourite things surrounding Ember Moon this year on WWE?
When they said, you're a superhero? More like supervillain.
Right. So, here's my pitch. They bring out the dog food. Isn't there a dog food called Win-A-Lot? And they go, more like Lose-A-Lot.
Pedigree chump, more like pedigree chump.
It's going to happen. I can't wait.
Triple H would let a line get on air, would he?
I genuinely think something like this is going to happen. I'm so excited for SmackDown tonight as a result of this. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Jerry Lawler sat devastated on Raw. Puppies!
Let us know your thoughts as well on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. Watch there, follow all three of us. You can follow Michael Hamflett at
Michael Hamflett.
You can follow Michael Sidgwick at
M. Sidgwick.
You can follow me and see the end of my glorious moustache. It's the end of the month. That's why I've been... so I've been maced. I've been having this monstrosity on my face for Movember. If you'd like to donate to a fantastic cause, the link is on my Twitter at Adam Wilborn. As I said, follow us all at WhatCulture WWE. This has been the SmackDown preview. My thanks to the Dadley Boyz. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.